Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Dean Phillips, and I am so proud today. I have with me Jeannine Kunz, who is, of course, from Tooling U-SME, where she is the Vice President of Training and Development. Welcome, Jeannine.
Thank you, Dean.
So great to have you here. To be completely honest and fully transparent, Jeannine and I have known each other for quite some time, with me being involved with SME, and she has been outstanding for years and is a completely huge asset to SME and to our entire American workforce. So, not to brag on you too much here, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Dean. No, thank you. It's really very much appreciated. And myself, I want to echo that same kind of sentiment. For those listening, Dean is a great volunteer and supporter of SME, our nonprofit purpose to advance manufacturing, and has dedicated countless hours of expertise and time to the cause of helping manufacturers. So thank you.
Thank you. What is your biggest takeaway that you see coming over the next 5 years as far as manufacturing goes and workforce development?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that I'd characterize that in technology advancement in utilization, right? So it's not just the advancements of technology, because, Dean, as we know, that's been kind of happening quite a bit, always happening inside of manufacturing. That's what makes the industry so cool, right? Very technology-rich, fast-paced change industry. But what we've been seeing over the last 5 years is all that technology advancement that's been out there, discussions around Industry 4.0, right? Digital manufacturing, automation, additive, artificial intelligence, these things that have been behind us, in the last 5 years, they're at our fingertips. We've struggled as an industry to adopt that technology. And to your question about what do I see for the next 5 years, I see us really starting to harness and leverage that technology, both in manufacturing and, to your question, in workforce and training. And why do I think that shift has happened? If we haven't done it very well in the last several years, why would it change in the next 5? One, we have a little bit of time and experience under our belt, right? We've been trying different methods to adopt new things inside of our operations and manufacturing, whether it's design or the manufacturing process and production. But COVID really made a shift for all of us, right? It did things from things that were related to supply chain management, right? Unfortunately, gave us a little bit of a awakening to where we were at risk in our operations and where technology would have really helped us, right? So some had to quickly adapt to pivot and adjust to the challenges that COVID brought upon our organizations, but also equally in learning. Obviously, that's the part that I work very closely with. And we are seeing where technology is being much more embraced in terms of the learning and training environment. Look at what the schools had to do. I think all of us realize it's not ideal to be completely using digital assets and solutions for our learning, but I think COVID showed us that both in manufacturing and in learning, there's a lot to be gained.
Absolutely. And I noticed that when you actually think about it, we were on the track of going in these directions, but COVID really accelerated the speed which we had to adopt. And I think you brought up that point, and that is really something that we need to emphasize, is that we were moving down this road, but we were at a snail's pace. We were like, I don't know, this workforce working from home, is that really good? There's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces that we have to integrate. We have to worry about cybersecurity. Guess what? Just like that, you had to make a decision of how you were going to do it, and you had to integrate it quickly. But other than that, we probably would still be here today not adopting any of that.
Yeah, I agree, Dean. I think, in some of the statistics we've looked at, manufacturing is an interest when it comes to workforce and training. manufacturing is kind of interesting. I said earlier how it's this technology-rich industry, and manufacturers love technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jean, I work with you and others in our membership, right? That's what they come to SME. They want to see it displayed at our events, read about it in their magazines. We love technology in manufacturing. But what's interesting is that love for technology and trying to look at how to incorporate in the manufacturing processes isn't always given the same weight in the learning process and the training process. So some of the statistics that come out from the Association of Training and Development that does studies across all sectors, right? So all industry sectors, and looks at how different sectors are using different modalities of learning. Manufacturing consistently is doing less with technology in the learning environment than other sectors. So if you use online as an example, you'd say across all sectors, it's about 45% of learning is starting to look to be online. In manufacturing, it's 31%. So you might say, well, that's partly because manufacturing is a very hands-on environment. So you're going to see more instructor-led, more on-the-job training. And that would make sense. But when you look across a number of statistics, you see that it just seems to be a little slower on adopting some of that technology that it could leverage inside of the learning environment.
That's an interesting point, because one thing that we've seen over the last several years has been a greater and quicker turnover of employees, because there's just been more moving parts. And as such, it's been an HR nightmare, and it certainly has been a training and development nightmare to get these people back up to speed. But you would think that that would increase the number of hours committed to developing and training your people, but the numbers just don't illustrate that.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, when you look at hours, kind of using that same study, it's the 2020 State of the Industry by ATD that they just put out. And it's one of those things for people like myself in the learning world. You're like, okay, it's like a kid at Christmas. Like, what's in the book? I can't wait to see how we're doing this year. And we pull open the pages. Okay, manufacturing, how you doing in terms of learning hours? And it was down. It's down 40%, the number of learning hours in manufacturing in the last 5 years. And pales in comparison to the average number. So if you looked at learning hours used per employee, on average, in all industries, it's about 35 hours. Manufacturing's at 14 and a half. And what's really kind of crazy, Dean, is that when you look at the report, the speculation, they did their best at ATD. They say, okay, well, maybe it's because technology is not changing as quickly in manufacturing. Maybe it's because, right, maybe it doesn't have the safety issues that other industries have. You can see where I'm going. I'm like, no, we do. We do.
Ask OSHA. They'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. So there's really no good reason that we wouldn't be at least at average. Healthcare, if you look at healthcare, they're right at the average. Well, healthcare should be there above, right? But at least healthcare made it to the average. So yeah, Dean, I think it's a matter of when we look at recruitment and retention, one of the statistics that, again, studies will show, what are, especially of the young people, what are some of the things that are going to kind of keep you, at your job, right? That you don't turn over, because I think, the terrible statistics that look at 40% of turnover happens in the first year. So we know this importance of investing in our employees right up front. Having good, strong onboarding programs is absolutely critical. But showing, especially the younger generations, that we have a structured kind of a career pathway, we offer learning and development, we want to grow you, is one of the critical attributes that especially younger people, but all people, my age too, look for from their organization. So we want to see, not only because we need it for OSHA, we need it to adopt the technology that's in front of us, we need it to retain our people and be competitive. So it's definitely not something that we want to take it seriously in terms of being a key pillar of a strategic plan for any manufacturer, is to have a strong workforce strategy to build the capabilities of your workforce.
Yeah. The OSHA reports have always indicated that there's a strong tie between training and safety, because the overwhelming majority of injuries occur to people that have been on the job less than 90 days. that illustrates just how important training is in order to provide safe work environments. But we just seem to try and move forward as quick as we can because we're in such a hurry to get manufacturing done, to get things out the door, that it isn't a high priority. But we need to do a better job of adopting that and using technology, especially using some of the new tools that are out there, which is amazing when it comes to education, using tools like augmented reality, virtual reality, to do these trainings without having to be exposed to the safety concerns.
That's, an excellent point, and kind of, going back to our earlier discussion around using technology and learning, SME, and you can imagine, right, we being a big focus of our, mission is to advance manufacturing. We know that this whole topic then of workforce is important. And so we want to try to keep pushing the envelope on how we use that technology inside of learning to help manufacturers develop their people and stay competitive and all those good things and keep them safe. And so we actually are launching here in 2021. We've been beta testing it in 2020, is using virtual reality, kind of virtual reality lab. So we're exactly what you said, because we've been using a lot with e-learning, right? So giving people knowledge-based experience and learning certain topics. And then we know that there's a pretty big jump from that to putting them behind a machine, machine tool, or giving them putting a welding equipment in their hands. So we know that gap, as you said, of skills development is using virtual reality to create a safe environment where someone can get as close as they can, right, to the real experience. Is something that SME is then investing in, like I said, beta testing and then launching here this year, because it's a nice filler space, if you will, between that e-learning knowledge base and before you actually get on the machine. And certainly safety issues, but also you could be breaking tooling, right? Very expensive mistakes that can happen. So we want to bridge that space and provide some more, again, using technology to give some ability to have the real life, so to speak, as close as we can get virtual experience of, running equipment or doing different things. So I think that's a big part too, when you talk about 5 years out. Other industries are doing more with it, but we're seeing some of the employers that are out there. We actually just did a webinar in December with BMW and how they're really incorporating that into their organizational learning strategies. So we anticipate that being part of that 5-year journey too, that I talked about, really using technology inside of learning and not just the manufacturing processes.
Great. Tell me a little bit about your background. How did you come to be involved? I know a little bit about your background, but for our audience, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving us your history of how you came to be here and involved in so deeply in manufacturing.
Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting way in the door, but it's been 20 years. I just celebrated my 20 years at SME. So I'll go in my Wayback Machine on how I got here. But I will say, I'll jump to the punchline, Dean, and say, I admittedly came from a space that was very different. I came out of the sports industry, helping build arenas and stadiums. I was doing feasibility studies to help, communities build a new stadium, a new arena. Some cases helping teams move, helping Los Angeles as they tried to look to recruit an NFL team and get football back to LA, things like that. So totally different industry, clearly. And truthfully, my husband would say, like, all you're doing is raising the price of hot dogs so family can't attend a game. And true story. And I scratched my head. I was like, oh my God, you're right. And so I come across this nonprofit that sounded pretty intriguing and was looking for someone to come in and, again, almost that feasibility skill set that I had, market, analysis of saying, how do we serve the manufacturing industry better? And they were looking for someone to come in with that kind of skill set to understand the market, understand the needs, and help create programs that do just that, right? Provide solutions. And so going back to that moment, admittedly, I come in with just this change of pace and different industry. And will tell you I absolutely fell in love with this industry. I think it's an incredibly cool industry. It has people that believe so much in what we do and what we create as products and solutions and life-changing things, right? Whether it's keeping people safe, getting them from one place to another, new materials that keep our environment better. I mean, a lot of really awesome things that happen inside of manufacturing. Truthfully, I didn't realize. And I think I can represent what our manufacturers who did grow up in it and who did have this as their discipline, unlike myself, just innately knew, and that we at SME and other manufacturers want everybody else to know. I'm one of those people, right, that was on the outside that didn't really have an appreciation for it. And I think that's probably one of our grandest challenges as an industry, and certainly at SME, with board of directors like yourself and employees like myself to tackle, because there's no reason that this industry shouldn't be the most coveted, in-demand industries out there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think some of the spotlight is grabbed because of, well, just for example, Elon Musk. I think a lot of people look to him and see him because of his personality, his willingness to just go for it. And because of that, some of the technology's lost, and everybody says, boy, that looks exciting. And he makes it appear more and more exciting, which is good for us in the long term. I think getting people interested and getting them excited about manufacturing is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And he has done an excellent job with that. I think a lot of those types of people, we need to take our manufacturers, our people, our students, which we do celebrate things like 30 under 30 and all of those kinds of things, of getting people excited and passionate, because we do have the passion. You're absolutely right. The commitment, the passion is there from the leaders in the industry, but we need to set them out front and say, let's make this exciting. Let's talk about why people are passionate about this and why this is such an important part of our entire system of financial stability within the country is very tied to manufacturing. If you can't manufacture, most countries can't survive just being a tourist country.
Right. Well, I think you hit it on the head, and it is an example like Musk making it right, the cool part, the cool factors, and then there's what COVID I think did. I think COVID gave our industry an opportunity. There's obviously all the negatives, right, of clear negatives that are associated with it. But one of the things it did is it brought into every single home this light on, right? We shined a light on the fact of PPE, ventilators, things like that, again, the average American is like, well, what do you mean we can't get access to this? What do you mean we can't make these, right? And it's like, well, that's manufacturing, right?
Yes.
And so understanding there's cool things in the sense of, call it maybe more the flashy things that we do in manufacturing, but there's also things that save lives, right? That make a huge difference that people, again, don't think about. And so it is those elements that, interestingly, are exactly when you do the interviews and research of millennials and Gen Z, they want to understand what their organization stands for. They want to understand the difference that they can make. And what we as an industry don't always do the best of is telling our story and shining a light on the great work we do, right? We just got to do the work, and we make the part or the component or the equipment or the technology or the materials, and we don't always convert that to what it means, right? And I remember the story. I won't name the company, but I was with a company and doing a tour of their operations, and they were in the medical device field, and they told the story about the machinist who was working on, prosthetics, something that was going to go inside of a person, right? And this gentleman comes in, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's talking to the machinist, and he's asking him about his job, and the person was just talking about the mechanics of this individual's work. Months and months later, this person came walking in, right, and wanted to go find that person. And he walks up to this machinist. He tells him, I wanted to come and talk to you about how you changed my life, right, for the work you do, right, that I was laying on. I wanted to meet the people who were making the piece that I was going to have put in my body when I'm on the operating table. And and the story was bringing me to tears as I'm like in there listening to this. And to think that, and this person who's telling the story is talking about how he didn't even really in his role understand the magnitude of what he did, right? He was looking at for the mechanical elements of what he did, which we certainly took pride in, right? Making sure it's very precise, right? And all the things that have to go into that kind of component. But really the impact he was having. And so how do we get those stories and understanding out there is definitely the code we have to crack, because it's a missed opportunity for young people to understand that's the kind of work they can do, but also just the sheer amount of work that's needed. Manufacturers are struggling to find people, and it's only going to become more complex jobs with more demanding, more technology, right? And more creative thinking and critical thinking and problem solving. All those things are needed in manufacturing more and more. So the opportunity, even if you start at a very entry level position, we all know that our manufacturer, we know the story. There's opportunities for growth.
Yes. And I think we have to find, how do we illustrate, or how do we determine that next Rosie the Riveter, an iconic level person that takes on a life of its own? How do we do that? And how do we get people passionate to say, wow, that's something I want, I can envision that importance of that role. Mm-hmm. It's right. And I think you illustrate that very well, talking about we sometimes overlook the part we play in the greater scheme of making this machine move within, not just from a mechanical standpoint, but a huge level scheme of the machine that is manufacturing as a whole.
Right. Yeah, most definitely.
What new technologies do you look to and say, these are ready to explode? I might be biased, but so SME certainly believes that there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity with additive, right? The process of adding material versus subtractive, not taking away from all the amazing things we can do with machining and subtractive manufacturing processes. But additive is certainly a great example. And I think it's a great example of changing the dynamics of the profile of people too, that we can attract into the industry with this new technology. So additive would be one. I think on the side of just data analytics and data scientists and things like that, when you say we know that there's a ton of data there to feed into improving our operations, our predictive maintenance, all those things that we can kind of leverage inside of manufacturing again, I think is just kind of there for the taking. And then just all of the opportunities with, I think, AI that kind of associate with that is, so I don't know if it's ready to explode, but it's there for us to kind of jump on and see what we can do to leverage that and really take us into the next generation of manufacturing. Great. Do you see the change that within the workforce? How do you see that changing and impacting where we go in manufacturing? What I mean by that is we are training these new and younger people to get into the industry, and their creativeness leaves a stamp and an imprint on that. What is it that their imprint is creating 5 years down the road? What is it that's going to be impactful in what they're doing and how they're shifting the thought of how manufacturing is done?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, there's definitely that evolution that we've been seeing, right, in various generations. In the last millennials and now the Gen Zs are really prior to that, the technology use in our upbringing and our own personal lives was nowhere like it is with these last two generations, with millennials and Gen Zs. So again, what's interesting about the very last question you asked me in relation to this is we think about so much of the conversation is about leveraging technology, digital environments, and yet then here's this generation that you say, what's the uniqueness of them? It's that exact same thing, right? It's the uniqueness of their digital savviness, their comfort, right? Their their creativity in using technology. I mean, it's just, my fifth grader decided to like create a YouTube channel on her own, and she's figuring all this stuff and making these videos. And it's incredible to see what the younger people will just do so much more intuitively. And so I think certainly that digital savviness of that generation, I think, plays a wonderful complementary role to the very same thing we want to embrace inside of manufacturing. So I think that's it. The other piece, though, that makes it interesting is I think it's number 5. It's like, I think it's the time in our workforce, if I remember the statement, that we'll have the most number of generations, because certainly the baby boomers are still on, right? So there's this large number of generations that are in the workforce right now, which is good and a challenge, right? So it's the whole opportunity as well as a challenge. The challenges are can be very diverse. The opportunity is diversity is good. Diversity is good in thinking, right? And problem solving and different perspectives. But it is making it very difficult on the learning and development organizations, the HR organizations, in how you meld all that together. So I would just say there's a lot going on, Dean, when you think about how we started the conversation around technology adoption and manufacturing, technology adoption and learning, these new generations coming in, and then you say, so what companies are faced with is just a myriad of different issues, right? Just that workforce now, right? They want instant gratification. I mean, they're playing on Fortnite, and they're collecting their points, and they get their skins and all the things that they're used to in their environments with this very different world that I know at least I grew up in. So this instant gratification and gamification and how things happen, again, it's just what they bring to their roles, which isn't say it's bad. It just makes it a challenge in structuring a learning and development HR strategy that moves the entire workforce forward together. But it's an opportunity, like I said.
Mm-hmm. The word I would use that when I describe someone that's 25 or younger is a level of fearlessness with technology.
Yeah. That's a good way of saying
it. They can just pick something and they will go for it. Whether they know it or not, they just go for it. Whereas
that's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
I'd sit there and I'd hold it. I'm like, I don't know where to go. What do I do? And I would just wait to try and determine that solution but they don't. They just go. And that's
right. Start clicking around.
That's right. And that's how they've learned. And I think that's an incredible asset that we can benefit from in the long run, is that fearlessness.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's harnessing that, right? Finding that. And sometimes we talk with manufacturers about, teaming up, right? Because then there's this completely amazing asset that your maybe older tenured, generations have, where they have much more experience, right? They can just walk up to a machine and feel it or hear it, and they understand. Mm-hmm. And so it's this, how do we take that knowledge and experience and extract it in such a way that the younger generations can benefit from it? And then conversely, like you said, that fearlessness around technology, how do they team up and create an amazing, complementary, strong team? And there's some companies that do a really good job of that. And that component, I guess I will say, I didn't touch on this too much. We talked about that on-the-job training. That one of the greater challenges we're seeing in manufacturing is doing structured onboarding, but also structured, what's the word? It's like formalizing the tribal knowledge before it goes out the door, really capturing it, right? And putting that as part of your onboarding. How do you just extract that knowledge and experience in such a way that you can learn from it for years to come, not just up until the point they leave? And that's been a challenge in manufacturing. It hasn't been a very structured process. So that's one of the things we find ourselves working with manufacturers a little bit more, not just on providing e-learning or instructor-led training or certification, but in the process of the how of thinking through the onboarding program, thinking about, the retiring workforce and how you ensure you're setting yourself up for sustainability with that experience that's walking out the door. Right.
Jeannine, how can people reach you?
Oh, yeah. So a good question. My Jeannine Kunz, and my email is jkunz@ M as in Mary, E as in Eric.org.
Great. It's been so great to have you here. I know you've got to run, and I do want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks as well. Appreciate it.
Thanks.